So, what's it like to be 8 years old? If you're 8, you're in school, right? You live with your parents, your brothers, your sisters, maybe you even have a pet. You probably spend a lot of time hanging out, playing video games and watching TV, and probably you don't have a job. But what if you're 8 and one day you're crowned king? Whew! How do you think you'd feel about that? The Bible tells the story of a boy named Josiah, who became king when he was only 8. King of Judah, the boss of the country, just 8 years old. Joe lived in a palace in Jerusalem, and that palace was probably very cool. You know, lots of rooms, totally awesome stuff, Michael Phelps Olympic-sized pool. You get the idea. But the palace wasn't the most important building in Jerusalem. That was the temple. The temple was where the people worshiped God. When Joe got older, no, older than that, hold on, not that old, about 26, he noticed that the temple was in bad shape. Its walls were crumbling, the roof leaked, it was cold and drafty. You get the idea. Because Joe loved God, he commanded that the temple be repaired. King's orders. Joe told his people to gather up all the money that was collected, and they gave it to the carpenters and builders and artists and plumbers so they could repair and restore the temple, right? So these guys got right to work building and fixing and repairing. While all this work was going on, one of the builders came across something hidden inside the walls of the old temple. It was a book. Not just any book. A sacred book of God's rules, which had been lost for years and years. It was the Bible. The Bible was brought to King Joe right away. But when Joe read this book, his face turned green and he fell to the ground. He even tore his clothes. But why was Joe so upset? He was upset because he realized that everyone in Judah, including him, was not living in the right way. That is, God's way. They weren't keeping the rules that God gave them in the first place. Joe needed to change all that, and quick. So he called a big meeting for all the people, and they met at the temple. And Joe read to them, straight from the Bible, all of God's rules. Then, right in front of God and everyone, Joe made a promise to follow God and to keep God's rules forever. And all the people did the same. And just to be sure all the people understood how important this was, Joe cleaned up the whole land, all across the country. Any statues or figures, any altars or shrines for any other fake gods were smashed and crushed and burned and chopped and beaten into dust. From then on, everyone followed the one true God. After that was finished, Joe threw a big party, a festival to celebrate these changes. He invited everyone. Lots of food and cake, lots of singing and dancing and worship to God. This celebration went on for 7 days. That's an entire week. Whew! Now that's some party. Okay, so why is this important anyways? What does it mean for us? To me? To you? Well, it's about knowledge. True knowledge is learning what God says, and knowing what God says makes you wiser than you can imagine.